The Owl House, the second child of Gravity Falls and the better, more bi-sibling of Amphibia. But is it good? Kinda, not really, maybe? I guess it is. The issues start with the very first scene of episode 1. Luz is an odd little gal with her head blissfully in the clouds and whatnot. The framing of Luz's quirktasticness is she's villainized because she's herself, but when you look at what we are shown, it's a different picture.
Give me death! Bleep, bloop, bleep.
As you saw, all of these instances are of Luz doing something that distresses other people. She's not a victim like we're supposed to believe. She's literally causing her lack of friends for being unintentionally insensitive.
Spider breath!
Hello students, today we'll be learning about obvious facts. Can someone tell me an obvious fact about spiders?
Mr. Maven, me!
Oh yes, Jimmy. I think they scare a lot of people. Yeah, great job, Jimmy. That's a
obvious fact.
You get an A+ for participation.
Hooray!
What makes it worse is that the people in the conformatorium were in there because of things like
I write fanfics of food falling in love.
7th grade me loved a good Stampy X squishy fanfic. There's nothing wrong with writing stuff like this.
We're but playthings for a higher being!
This is just babbling nonsense.
I'm here because I like eating my own eyes. Oh.
And this dude is just acting like a male bodybuilder desperate for a daily protein count. And considering the world he lives in, this shouldn't even be seen as anything odd.
Give me your skin!
All these things are harmless. Like, of course, Luz shouldn't be treated so harshly. But framing it like people don't like her because her authentic self is inoffensive is just erroneous. It's a Neanderthal's nebulous notion of nuance. So the entire premise of this episode being Luz saving other weirdos who are victims of unfair oppression because she was the same is just disingenuous. They were genuinely oppressed. Luz is just rightfully being punished for scaring and making people uncomfortable at inappropriate times.
Luz is a nuisance and a danger to our children.
And they literally show us her peers don't have a problem with her until she does things that are understandably uncomfortable for others. If Luz and or the audience was expecting people to overcome their fears just to be her friend, then that's just lacking in fundamental inter and intra-personal awareness on both sides. And that's why this entire aspect of her character being
The only thing I've ever really wanted was to be understood.
falls apart because Luz's interaction with her human peers are varying extents of harmful. Bringing these big-ass fireworks into a building is destructively dangerous. You can burn things down and physically harm people. You are not quirky at that point. You are Osama bin Laden's apprentice. People aren't going to understand you if you are a disturbing individual to them. And remember, coming into yourself, introspection, and maturing as an individual are some of the major themes of this show. So it also suffers from this lack of awareness on the writer's part. However, this show is saliva-drippingly gorgeous at times, and I will be acknowledging that whenever I can. Viewing Luz going to the Boiling Owls through a thematic lens of go somewhere people appreciate and are acquainted to your uniqueness. Well, that's good and fine, to be honest. But that's not the only problem with Luz's character, but that's a whole nother can of worms. So the structure of the show is wacky shenanigans, some character moments, introducing recurring characters, and world building. These adventures in season 1 have a huge emphasis on comedy. I don't have a problem with these comedy-focused episodes at all. Most of them for me are unremarkable, predictable, and inoffensive. Except this little orange-haired shit. It was so annoying.
Mods, crush his skull, thank you.
But anyway, you got this scratchy voiced, charmingly immature owl lady who's gonna say something along the lines of
Feast your eyes on this elite force.
When does that elite force get here?
the phallic owl who's gonna be obtuse and loud, whose voice actor probably has vocal cords that look like floss.
Fly! Together forever! You and me! Every single day!
The silly little tyrant dog screaming about how he wants to kill or dictate people. Unfortunately, these adventures and shenanigans range in quality, with the start being episode 6, which is on the weaker side of things.
According to the Conjuring books I've read, we say the incantation and make a connection with the doll.
The entire A-plot of episode 6 isn't possible and shouldn't exist, at least not in this way because Luz has no magic, so it's impossible for her to be the third person in this conjuring spell, which means Ida should have got captured by the Emperor's lackeys in the B-plot, which essentially causes Ida's capture in the season finale to occur 13 episodes earlier. Episode 8 is some body swap silliness.
Whoa, these guys really have the hots for you.
Ida is wanted for a lot. $1 trillion fucking dollars. And literally lives a couple miles from a huge marketplace and is wanted by the Emperor. Why is she not being hunted and searched for in the most basic way ever, being around the area she was last spotted? Ida being a wanted criminal is something that is inconsistently brought up and causes plot points, but not nearly enough for it to be believable that she's wanted for an amount of money that could single-handedly fund war crimes in 100 different countries for 100 years. Her being a criminal and her interactions with the general public are very disconnected. Like, she's the host for Grom in episode 16, but the general public sees her as a criminal and are against wild magic generally. The whole Ida is a criminal thing is very inconsistent in its portrayal. Sometimes they just forget about it, and sometimes they just use it depending on how they feel. Episode 9 starts a certain trend that disrespects a certain character. Episode 14. The entire premise of this episode isn't possible because Tibble's house never should have gotten destroyed, and Ida should be captured, but whatever. Episode 16. This episode is a good example of a useful plot, with Luz becoming stronger and exploring her fears, etc. We also get to see Luz having internal conflict because she's reminded of her mom through her phone. Last time I checked, the Boiling Owls were disconnected from humanity in such a profound way that they don't even know what a high five is. And never mind having any human technology. So how is Luz texting her mom? Wi-Fi and cell towers do not exist in this world at all. So these mommy issues which happen because of Luz interacting with her phone constantly throughout the show should not be happening at all. However, they do fix this in season 2, episode 1. Good shit. This episode is also one of the main catalysts for Lumity. I'ma just say it. This relationship is boring. Now hear me out. Romantic relationships are usually uniquely different from all other types of relationships in real life and fiction, and usually it adds something meaningfully different. But Lumity doesn't do that. It just causes melodrama that is easily resolved at the end of the episode, like any of the other relationships, and really typical happenings of character moments and introspection.
If you don't include all the tomato-faced ass moments.
I'm not as cool as you.
As long as it's a secret, okay?
Alright, I get it!
For example, the episode where Luz is withholding telling anybody about her not being able to partake in the tradition of her father passing. It's just Luz being reluctant to tell anybody and dealing with the stress of it by herself. Amity worrying about it, and at the end, Luz doing the tradition with Amity. If you replace Amity with Ida or Willow or even Gus, the same things happen here. There is no reason to think that this is an interaction specific to Amity. The romance is shallow. It doesn't create any unique, impactful character interactions. Zuko and Mai from Avatar: The Last Airbender are a great example of unique and meaningful character interactions stemming from romance. Since we get to see Zuko at peace, not worried about capturing Aang or anything else he's usually frustrated and hyper-focused on, which is a rare occurrence for the audience and Zuko himself. The romance doesn't create any unique character development for Luz, doesn't lead to any plot points that incorporate the romance in a meaningful way. They could have had a secret new type of magic that's only unlocked when someone is in true love, which really makes sense considering the magic sack is literally attached to the heart, and we're literally shown strong emotions affect magic with scenes from Gus and Willow. And the heart has been a symbol of love for millennia, just a huge missed opportunity. Also, I don't mean to offend anybody because obviously some of y'all are really heavily invested in Lumity, like a lot. However, I will be defending Lumity also. A common point I hear is that Luz and Amity become girlfriends too quickly, which I think is ridiculous. They are kids experiencing really strong feelings of attraction. They're not going to be critically engaging with the pros and cons of getting into a relationship. Plus, considering Luz has never had any friends, having a crush on someone was definitely a feeling she couldn't quell in any way, and fuse that with her enthusiasm, and yeah. You see. However, I do understand this romance is really important LGBT representation, which is suppressed and demonized by media companies. And while that was the reason why this show abruptly ended, I respect the fuck out of the Owl House team for keeping this relationship in and keeping the integrity of their story, despite the extreme scrutiny. However, the representation is a purpose served in the real world. In the narrative, this relationship is seen as ordinary by everyone in the Isles. A common gag in the Owl House community is,
Matter of fact, jump in a river.
where the current is so strong it just takes your worthless ass to hell. Clearly you were born for nothing.
The romance is unique because of the state of our current media landscape and the general attitude of big corporations towards LGBT relationships. But in the context of the narrative, it just adds a relationship that doesn't differentiate itself well from the others in the narrative and has the depth of a toenail. We are in the first endgame now, and it's kinda shabby a little bit. But firstly, the fights. And the fights in the show in general are cool as hell. And you can definitely see the anime inspiration in the fight scenes. The show explicitly tells you. That's literally a Dragon Ball reference.
Don't let it go to your head!
So earlier in the episode,
I did it! Oh, hey, look at the box!
Lilith can go toe-to-toe with Ida but can't defeat an oversized, pervert-coded owl demon.
Sounds like our little demon is becoming a demon.
Ugh, why does that sound so wrong coming from you?
Hootie single-handedly defeating Lilith and some of the Emperor's personnel starts an eye-rolling trend for the villains in this show. So Luz suits up and goes to save Ida. With the odds stacked against her, she has to defeat dozens of Belos' men as a simple human whose nature is devoid of magic, and she easily defeated all of those men.
They just have to go through basic training before becoming scouts. It's not too bad.
Dude, do you even remember what we had to do? The duels, the mazes with the traps. That time we were left alone on a mountain?
This makes Luz's single-handed dismantling of a small militia even worse, because if you're trained and tested in a life or death situation, that means you were capable enough to survive.
And in the case of this comet, that means these guards were either extremely powerful with magic, so they could brute force their way to survival, extremely creative with their magic, so they could live, or great at teamwork, which allowed them to survive.
And any of these, and God forbid any combination, would mean Luz should have gotten destroyed here. You know, the girl who's only been using magic for a couple months and effectively controlled in less insane situations, but whatever. So then she makes it through and gets to Ida, but can't free her. Then Luz has to face Belos herself in a witch's duel. It's important to note,
He's the Emperor. He's the most powerful witch alive.
and also the fact that Belos really wants the portal Luz has to the human world, which all he had to do was trap Luz in a tight bubble, freeze her arms and legs to force her to give it to him, anything like that.
Not even close.
Why are her hands freer than fresh air?
But instead he decides to fight Luz,
And it gets destroyed because of that.
But my point here is, why is Belos all of a sudden like,
Okay, I'll play.
when literally every time else we see him, he's very calculating and serious, always steps ahead, and is extremely strict with his plans for the human world, but all of a sudden, only in this season finale, he wants to play around with an amateur witch. Season 1 is definitely the messiest, but it's fine. In the season 2 finale, Belos isn't even touched by any of Luz's magic, but here he almost gets blinded. Come on, man, let's not disrespect our villain, the second most powerful person in the show. Like, that is truly ridiculous, man. Luz gets away and...
The Emperor should let Ida go. Let Ida go! Let Ida go! Let Ida go!
Let me show you the problem with this.
No one's gonna risk change unless you have proof that he's up to something.
Thank you, Boiling Isles.
We love you, Grandpa!
Do you think she's right?
Don't let the Titan hear you say that. Belos says he can read minds.
But here the people are just going against the brainwashing propaganda they and their ancestors have been dealing with. This little revolt shouldn't have happened at all. So the good guys win and everything goes back to normal for season 2. Just like magic. I really like this magic system. It allows for a lot of creative and cool powers. The wow factor is definitely there, despite the fact that it doesn't reach its full potential. But let me show you the problem with the Owl House's magic system with one click.
Boom.
It's too damn soft, but only when it comes to its relationship with the villains. What that means pretty much is that there are no strictly established rules for what is and what isn't possible, and the application of this magic is extremely varied for combat, ordinary activities, transportation, etc. And to be fair, that is part of the appeal of this magic system. Spells that the characters and the audience weren't aware of before can be discovered constantly. But another little problem before the bigger one. With the amount of covens, some are badly underrepresented, like construction and beast and potions. Things like abomination get too much screen time, like it's really cool, and my brother Darius is fly as hell.
Bro, if I was a girl, legs wide open, bro.
But come on, man, just give my other magic some representation, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of room for things that are possible with this system that never happen, or things that could be used to solve problems easily, but aren't because the plot needs to happen in certain ways, and it's most offensive on the villain side. Season 2, Episode 6.
We shall wipe out wild magic forever.
Okay, cool. So this fact, with the combination of a couple others, is a huge issue for one reason. Palisman. The state they exist in this world, makes no sense. The first reason why is Belos' fundamental character traits and motivations. In what world does Belos literally empower the future generation with a form of wild magic that allows extremely fast and convenient transportation that would allow them to escape his forces better, hypothetically, and the ability to bring people back to life? Like, bruh, you're telling me Belos is allowing schools, which are extremely important institutions, to just give out wild magic when he has literally sent coven heads to force children into one magic type? I'm feeling very about this, and you might be like, oh, Belos literally had the Palisman being taken away, but then you realize something else about Belos.
Belos has been emperor for 50 years.
He's been emperor for half a century, and he's been in the Boiling Isles much longer than that. So why hasn't he conglomerated all of the Palisman? He's had decades upon decades to do it, and if you're willing to argue Belos wouldn't make that a huge priority,
you're not coming from a place of intellectual honesty, so debating you would be pointless.
And he needs to keep his curse under check with them, and the eradication from the general public further usurps power from the masses.
Which is literally his whole gimmick.
Another quick digression. Oh! Let's fucking Joe! Y'all don't know how happy I was when this happened. I thought they were gonna give the Cardinal to Luz, and I hated that because it was so generic and uninspired to give it to her. So this was so cathartic for me when it first happened. Oh man. But overall, my point here is that Palismen are not scrutinized nearly as much as they should be. They're treated casually, like Belos getting the Abomatron things when they shouldn't be. And considering Belos' entire character, the fact that the general public is against wild magic and that the very magic of this world could be used to easily compound the Palisman to such an extent that I'm not even going to give examples here because the video would be 3 hours long. So I'm just going to make a list. But the magic of the Owl House allows for stuff like this, which is a problem within itself. Keep in mind, magic is literally part of the Boiling Owl's people. It's intimately intertwined with their self-image and humanity, the structures of the society, and their general consciousness. And this next section is a little involved, so I've been advised to add a cheat code for keeping y'all's attention. Firstly, considering how diverse magic is, it makes Belos and the Emperor's Coven in general look idiotically ineffective. For example, in episode 17, scouts are sent to the Owl House. Then you realize that's unnecessary and ineffective. Why isn't Luz just teleported straight to Belos?
I know Luz wasn't at the house, but I'm saying their methodology is the flaw here.
And you might be like, teleporting things to you isn't possible.
I'm not sure what you're going through, but...
Okay, well, maybe you have to be able to visualize and know where the thing is first to teleport it to you.
Somebody tell me how he did it! I have to know!
If you're telling me you can teleport multiple people into someone's mind, which is not a real space you can visualize, it's essentially a different realm that is intangible from an insane distance from the actual person, but you can't teleport Luz to yourself?
You're not coming from a place of intellectual honesty, so debating you would be pointless!
And if that whole teleportation thing isn't possible for some dumb reason, why not just have all the guards bomb the house with sleeping gas and make a bubble around it? Also, the fact that Ida and Lilith escaped the house is odd because, correct me if I'm wrong, but when raiding a place, don't you want to figure out if the people you're looking for are actually there and have a visual on them before executing anything? But then you would say, well, they simply would have had the villains do it. But then you realize that would have made the villains intellectually competent on a basic level and changed the plot in a way that the writers did not and could not effectively write around. Like, everyone is wanted in the final episodes of season 2. Why not just go in their minds, destroy their memories of them being wanted and the knowledge of their powers, then they'll go back to the Owl House like nothing happened with no skills. Boom, you won instantly. And taking the fact that they already realized Lilith was a traitor/fugitive of sorts, they should have destroyed her memories and petrified her at the beginning of season 2, especially since she's pretty powerful and they didn't know she didn't have any magic. Also, considering the Coven guards are essentially the police of this world, I would like to see their domestic abuse rates. The show proves you can destroy memories from the inside. Invading people's minds seems to be a spell that's commonly known among competent witches. And a less intrusive, less advanced version was shown to be taught in schools. So why isn't this being utilized more often? But I completely understand why that type of magic couldn't be used. However, the trade-off for that being inferior villains and contrivances can't be understated. Also, why wouldn't Bellows have everyone in his coven learn to turn people to stone magic? It'd be a great way to catch people and can be reversed. Or just equip them with simple sleeping spells.
Nap time!
To catch everyone, that's literally it. And why aren't they equipped with basic tools to help them perform their jobs efficiently? It's essentially if cops didn't have tasers or cuffs in real life. The Emperor's Coven has an adequate militia. In theory. And they're shown to do things intelligently.
Guess I can look forward to my own petrification, huh?
No. It'd be too much of a hassle to find a replacement.
So why don't they do it consistently? But then again, I guess having a thought on the level of, maybe I should empower my coven in a way that fundamentally helps them be more powerful and helps me eradicate wild magic isn't something Bellows would do, right?
Members of the Emperor's Coven have access to all, yes, all forms of magic.
We start off with episode 9.
Being younger than everyone is hard. You're overlooked, ignored. But at the HAS, I matter.
Show don't tell, man!
By the way, that show don't tell clip is literally from the same episode. And what makes this character moment even worse is that they never show us him being overlooked because of his youth. The closest thing we get to it is seeing him get exploited because of his youth and his intellect. They didn't even take their own advice. Gus is literally the president of a club in this episode. And the reason he's being overlooked in this episode isn't because he's young, but because Mathalamu claims to have more knowledge on humans. The literal reason these kids are in this club in the first place. What makes
being younger than everyone is hard. You're overlooked, ignored.
Even worse is that
it's almost time for our main drama event. Please, take a seat.
Gus is literally the announcer for Grom, the super important annual tradition for this school, which further disproves his only character moment in season 1. And this happening for 2 of Gus's major character moments is terrible, because he only has about 1, 2, 3 in total. Correct me if I'm wrong or missing 1 or 2. The only reason I can think of as to why a significant amount of his character moments are stunted is because of some form of subconscious racism. I mean, just look.
Who's ready to board Air Loose? Boys, prepare to fly.
Why is he at the back of the mode of transportation? Does Rosa Parks mean nothing to the writers? Jokes that should definitely not be taken seriously by any extent aside. And the final important character moment for Gus is episode 18 of season 2.
Believe in that lie. Just like you want to believe you're dumb or whatever. But it's not true. I promise. I wouldn't mess with you.
I guess years of insecurity can be solved with a single 30-second conversation with someone you barely know. I guess every therapist, counselor, and psychologist in the Western Hemisphere will be out of a job and have to resort to Like the way years of mental anguish just vanished in mere seconds just emphasizes how negativity in this story isn't nearly as impactful as it should be, and it starts back with our main star. Something I realized after watching is that Luz having no friends doesn't stunt her social skills at all somehow. All she had was her mom, who of course further encouraged her self-suppression a little bit. Not having or being able to make friends during your most formative years where you're most susceptible to being negatively affected by demonstrably inadequate social calibration definitely doesn't have any negative impacts on people, I guess. And you might be like, well, she's self-assured. It even says it in the description of the episode, so she's not worried about how others perceive her. But that's not the point. The point is that proper socialization among people your age being foreign to you is going to negatively affect you as a child in some way, somehow. But Luz can perfectly communicate and navigate less than favorable social interactions, which is odd, because you can see Amity affected by her social upbringing and growing out of that, you know, character development and all that stuff. But not Luz, the main character. Did they seemingly forget realistic character behaviors in order to have a quirky everyman type main character? All I'm saying is Luz should have had trouble socializing with people her age that she eventually grows out of, because she hasn't been able to do that for her entire existence. And I do realize that the demon realm was way more acclimated to people with her interests and behaviors, but I'm just saying she should have genuinely had inadequate interactions with people her age. Like maybe she becomes so excited she finally has friends that she starts to overwhelm them and invade their personal space, physically and mentally. Just something, man. Also, no, Luz being banned from school and stuff like that isn't a consequence of bad social skills. It's literally just her trying to adjust to an entirely different dimension, and the growing pains that
come with adjusting to society where magical ability determines the validity of one's existence, where our world's notions of gender, sexuality, and race do not exist in any capacity.
But this also reinforces something else I realized after watching The Owl House, which is perfectly summed up with a single clip in the finale. Belos, the man who almost eradicated magic and threw the bowling isles into chaos, has returned, and everyone is calm and having a casual farewell scene.
I hope to see you again.
We'll be back after we get some revenge.
And even when they get back, they're just casually walking through a forest. It's almost like the characters themselves realize that negativity and bad events happening are nonsensically fleeting, easy to resolve, and largely inconsequential. And not just in season 3, but in the show as a whole. Occurrences of misfortune cause temporary feelings that cause temporary episode premises and character moments. And while that's fine most of the time, some things shouldn't be treated in this temporary, casual manner, because it makes the characters feel less human when you realize this. And I think most people don't, and I'm sure of it because of one character. Odalia. People hate her, but if you realize negativity is very shallow and easy to overcome in this show, you wouldn't hate her because you realize all her BS is inconsequential. Recognizing this pattern made me indifferent towards a lot of things that happened, and lo and behold, the show sticks to this type of underwhelming conflict. Let's start with Ida. She almost dies and inadvertently endangers the life of her student in the season 1 finale, and the next episode she just back to the regular old Ida. Like, why is this treated as a normal silly conflict? Like it's a comedy-driven episode. She should be changed in some significant way. Maybe she starts to refuse to teach Luz magic anymore because she knows if she encourages her witchhood, she'll become even more brash, which could endanger her more. Now, let's go to her sister.
Very good, Steve.
Oh my god.
They don't even have it, man. Lilith inheriting the curse isn't all that negative somehow, so the sacrifice loses its impact, being a huge showing of selflessness and literally changing your life forever and destroying your well-being. But that isn't what happens. The only thing that happens is a little bit of stress from the initial adjustment period and Lilith turning once and fighting Ida, which doesn't affect anything in any unpleasant way, and the only consequence is actually a positive one where Lilith gets to recover from her feelings of neglect from her mother by going home with her and becoming a fridged character. So if anything bad did happen, we don't know. So inheriting something that destroyed your sister's life for decades upon decades is just a teeny tiny inconvenience now. That is actually a net positive for your life. Kinda defeats the whole purpose of a curse, you know, but okay. Also, Lilith's owl form looks way cooler than Ida's, no debate, I'm objectively correct. Even on Luz's side of the equation of what happened with Ida, don't you love when your guardian that has protected and cared for you and helped you become your ideal version of yourself almost dies, and you realize the ruler of the demon realm you're an outcast in is an evil bastard? You know what? Nah, I think I'll just go right back to the normal me. With the only notable thing happening is Luz feeling guilty for, the premise of one episode. That is it. Like, imagine if Luz became paranoid and wanted to become stronger to the point of self-destruction because of Ida getting captured. And it makes sense. We already see in the Chosen One episode that her enthusiasm can lead her into trouble. All you have to do is use that enthusiasm and apply it negatively by putting it into overdrive. And it would have made the Ida versus Luz fight more impactful without extending the length, since I know they were short on time, because she's using the power she cultivated to become stronger for Ida against her. Man, I cooked. That's good shit. I mean, even...
Hunter, the sancticized servant character. His life was constructed for the aid of genocide. He is also a victim of substandard character writing.
He realizes his entire life and his whole purpose, the thing he dedicated himself to for his entire existence, was founded on lies by a truly evil person, and he's just the same guy. How do you not drastically change from this? It's literally a pre-midlife crisis. Realistic character reactions to negative events cannot replace drastic character changes that should have occurred from said events. I mean, even Ida losing her arm and being separated from Luz for over a year and having her home in shambles, and she's just the same old her. Seems like these characters read too many Twitter statue profile pics stoicism quotes. Even Luz accidentally helping Bellows is also insubstantial in the big picture of the narrative because her friends don't even care and are very understanding, so all of her stress and perceived negative possibility was all for nothing. I understand this is realistic and makes sense, but that's not the point here. The point is, this is just an example of insubstantial negativity. Just take that point in a vacuum. Plus, Bellows was defeated literally in the span of 25 minutes without any impactful consequences.
There was nothing challenging about those challenges.
Flapjack dying does not count. The characters literally don't care after the initial sadness, even Hunter. But I understand with the time constraints they couldn't adjust for all this stuff, so don't take this critique too harshly. Also, considering that the boiling owls being destroyed to an extent isn't that big of a problem, since you can reconstruct everything perfectly with construction magic and use people's memories to construct everything perfectly back to the way it was. Another tiny flaw that this magic system creates, and this is one of the biggest reasons I call the Owl House immature. It abandons logical and realistic character writing for the sake of keeping the tone more lighthearted. Are you seriously telling me these characters are part cyborg? I mean, you can see negatively traumatic events change dogs in real life. I see videos all the time where a dog is abused by their owners and the dog becomes cautious and aggressive towards all people. So you're telling me a fucking chihuahua has more realism than these characters? But yeah, that's pretty much the Owl House. The finale was really strong, actually. And oh my god, look at my boy Augustus. He looks glorious. Oh my lord, this almost makes up for all of the disrespect the writers threw at him. Oh man, they did so good.